Hi there, I'm Kieran. This is ShelleyDuvallScream, and this week I'm going to be talking about the 2008 film Let the Right One In. Let the Right One In, or Laten Rata Komma In, is a Swedish film, and I would like to apologize in advance for all of the names that I'm about to butcher. This movie was based off a novel which was written by John Ajvide Lindqvist, who also wrote the screenplay for the movie. It was directed by Thomas Alfredson and stars Kara Hedebrandt as Oscar and Lena Leanderson as Ely. You can see me looking at my notes. I first heard about this movie, I'm pretty sure, through Tumblr. It was suggested as a great movie to watch on Netflix. It took me a little while to get around to watching it, but when I did, I fell in love with it right away. It's a really beautiful film. It moves a little slowly, but I think that sort of languid pace fits the story really well. It takes place in Sweden, obviously, in a town in the dead of winter, and that kind of barren landscape also says a lot about them. The movie follows the stories of Oscar and Ely, who are both about 12 years old. Oscar is a young boy who lives with his mother, and he has trouble being bullied at school. He often fantasizes about getting revenge. He has a knife that he keeps, it's kind of his secret. And the first time he actually encounters Ely, he's outside threatening a tree, the way that Connie, the kid at school, threatens him, telling him to squeal like a pig. And he's stabbing the tree, and Ely sees him. Ely is, for the sake of making this a little easier, I'm going to say a girl. Though it's complicated. She moves into Oscar's apartment complex in the middle of the night with an older man, assumed to be her father. And the first thing that they do when they move into the apartment is cover up the windows. At first, we don't know much about Ely or the man that she's with, and we mostly follow Oscar, but we do see the older man one night. He's standing alone in a very barren area, and a young man walks by. Yes, for the time, the young man says he doesn't wear a watch. And the older man gasses him, hoists him up so he's hanging upside down from a tree, and slits his throat, and he's collecting the blood in a jar. Unfortunately, he has to abandon the blood because a pair of women are following their dog who has found him in the body. And then we see, though we do not see her face in the scene, we see Ely yelling at him, saying, "You're supposed to take care of me." It's not until later, though, when she says that she'll just have to take care of this herself, that we find out that Ely is a vampire. The first time that Ely meets Oscar, she tells him that they can't be friends, and Oscar wonders why. She tells him that's just how it is. But over time, you really see them develop an affection for each other. He's the only person that you ever see Ely talking to, aside from the older man that she lives with, who shows a lot of concern over her growing relationship with Oscar. Oscar is presented as a really vulnerable character, and this is true from the very first time we see him, where he's standing in the window. He's very pale, blonde hair, blue eyes, and he's just standing there in his underwear. Being bullied is another huge issue for Oscar, as I said, and for most of the movie you always see him just take it. He doesn't fight back, and one night after one of Connie's friends hit him in the face with like a reed or something, but he has a scar. Ely tells him that next time he should hit back, and he should hit back harder than he dares to, and then they'll leave him alone, and that if not, she'll help him. This loneliness and isolation is also very important to Ely, especially after she loses the father figure. She doesn't have anyone. She can't talk to anyone. She can't go out during the day. And the only reason she knows Oscar is because he happens to go out and play in the courtyard at night. She's clearly very lonely. Though I also think she's very afraid of connecting with Oscar. She wants to protect him and herself. The use of hands on screen is really important in this film. There are a lot of times when a hand is the main focus of a shot. This is a pretty clear representation of human contact, which I think is problematic for both Oscar and Ely. Obviously, Ely has trouble relating to people and making friends and forming relationships because she's a vampire, but for Oscar, I don't think you ever see him touch anyone else. There's a lot of his hand on his window, his hand on the wall when he's listening to Ely do Morse code. And that longing for contact, which kind of builds up to a moment when he hugs her, and it's awkward and it's uncomfortable, but you can see in both of them that it's much needed. I want to talk about a little bit about the violence in this movie, because I think it's really beautifully done. There's definite gory moments. We see Ely attack two different people. We see her caretaker murder a young man, slit his throat. We see the dead body pulled out of the ice. We see a bloody arm down into the pool. But a lot of it is indirect. For instance, when Ely attacks someone, we mainly see her and we never see her like a close-up of her biting someone. When her caretaker slits the boy's throat, it's his body and from behind that we see. So we don't actually see the throat be slit. But later we do see the wounds. We do see the hanging body with blood dripping this way because he's upside down. And a really big part of the violence in this is the noise. And in my research on the movie, I found that they did a lot of special Foley to try to get those noises exactly right. And I think that was very smart of them, to really focus on the sounds we were hearing, because even though we're not seeing these gruesome things happen per se, having that sound there, it lets us imagine, instead of using special effects, it lets us imagine what is happening. And that's almost more gruesome in some ways. I think that I appreciate, I should say, that there's not a ton of violence in this movie, but when it's used, it's done so in a really artistic way that is still terrifying and is still really gruesome, but at the same time isn't overly gory. I want to talk a little bit about Ely's character, because, like I said, it's a little easier to say she. It's a female actress, but it's a lot more complicated than that. So, in the book, I haven't read it, but I did do some research on this. In the book, Ely is a boy who was made a vampire at age 12, and at that time was also castrated. This is never explained in the movie, though there is a single shot where we do see Ely's mutilated genitalia. It's not graphic. Well, it's a little graphic, but I mean it's not sexually graphic. That's the only thing that really speaks to that, though, except for the fact that Ely repeatedly tells Oscar, "I'm not a girl." Now, if you don't connect the idea that Ely is in fact a boy, there are a lot of other ways to read this that I think come more easily to the audience than putting everything else together. And those are a couple of things. One, that, as she says, she's 12, but she's been 12 for a very long time. So I'm not a girl, meaning I'm not young, I'm not like a little girl. Or two, I'm not a girl, meaning I'm not human. And like I said, I think those are a little easier to pick up, but I really find it a super interesting subtext that Ely is in fact a boy. This idea of bonding and this idea of love between Ely and Oscar changes a lot if you think about it in that context. And I really wish I could pick up more on whether or not Oscar understands that in the movie, because it's really interesting. But The Right One In has a lot of balance to it. It's got really amazingly relatable characters who I think were acted fantastically and written fantastically. It has a vampire love story. Who doesn't love that nowadays? It has that element of darkness and of violence that every horror movie needs, and it's also just really beautifully shot. I think it's a beautiful story, it's a beautiful film, and it's definitely worth a watch. It's available to stream on Netflix, and you should absolutely check it out. Soon, I'm not sure exactly when, but I am going to watch the American version of the film, Let Me In, and do a comparison. But I have to find the movie first. Thanks for watching. Make sure to tune in next week. I'm going to be talking about the movie The Conjuring and how it relates to and borrows from the Amityville Horror.